Hello, and welcome to episode 92 of 10,000 Stitches podcast. A podcast all about knitting and my life, and which doesn't seem to appear at any sort of regular frequency anymore. My name is Andy, and if you guys were looking for me on the interwebs, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Ravelry as Purlbug, Purlbug. You can find my blog at thepurlbug.com, and then we have the 10,000 Stitches podcast group on Ravelry. I will mention that I have been horrible at keeping up with any of those things lately, so I apologize for that. Not so much like the Instagram or stuff like that, because that's my own personal thing if I want to do it or not. But I know I have not been as good as I would like to be about replying to YouTube comments or, being active on the Ravelry threads. And for that, I apologize. Life has just been really busy lately. But yeah, I am currently recording on Sunday, April 22nd, and I think today is Earth Day, if that's correct. Happy Earth Day. Or yesterday was, something like that. But this episode will go up on Tuesday, April 24th. I don't have a ton to talk about today. Even after not recording for 3 weeks, I don't have a ton to talk about, but I do have a finished object. I have a work in progress. I can talk a little bit about what's coming up next. I have some dyeing to show off, some knit-along news and stuff like that, and then we'll do some chit-chat. So who knows what today's episode has in store. But yeah, let's jump right into it with my finished object. And this is a very recently finished object, as in I finished it this morning. So I will mention that, I haven't recorded for 3 weeks, and I know the last time I recorded, I didn't have a lot to talk about. Because I just hadn't had a lot of time to knit, and it's sort of been the same thing for the past 3 weeks. I just haven't had much time to knit. And so it's going to seem like I haven't gotten a lot done, at least, sort of for me, because I know I'm, usually pretty good about churning out finished objects, and I just have not lately. So, but this is a finished object, and it's one that I'm very excited about. And I think the only other time you guys have seen it was in the last episode when it was a new cast on. But this is my Matchmaker shawl. And this is a pattern by Martina Bem, and it's called Matchmaker. And it is sort of this big sort of triangular bandana cowl shawl thing. So this is sort of me holding it so that the loud motorcycle. So the point is in the front, or I can sort of fold it so that it's symmetric, and then it looks like this. So here, so you can see it's sort of that triangular shape. This is the back side, and that's what it looks like. So I talked a little bit about this last time. I really loved the construction of this. Martina Bem is so interesting in terms of some of her shawls are so they're mindless yet still very interesting. So this is a good example of it, right? So this was mostly just mindless knitting, right? So the way that this works is you start at the very tip of the point, and then you sort of, it's actually at an angle as you sort of work your way up side to side, just in garter stitch. And then once you get to however many stitches you decide, she has stitch counts in the pattern, or there's sort of a version that you kind of do whatever you want, and she just gives you a general formula. But anyway, once you get to that point, which for me was when it got to be about this wide, right? So this top edge, you bind off some stitches in the middle, and then you take some stitches on either side and you fold them into the back here to form this sort of point. So you can see where the dark edges come in, sort of around this lighter triangle. So that was the sort of unbound off stitches that were left over from that big long top edge. And then you sort of knit this triangle piece. So you're starting out, you have this big long side and this big long side. So you have a whole bunch of stitches still, and then you sort of work upward. So you kind of do this sort of thing like this, decreasing as you go along until you basically run out of stitches. So it's nice because there's no big long bind off, except for, this sort of one that happens in the middle, but it doesn't happen at the end. So when you're done, you're done. And it, produces this really interesting shape and this sort of 3D thing, but you never have to knit in the round. It's always just garter stitch. So I really liked it. And so I forget exactly how she shows off it being worn. She for all of her, patterns that are sort of interesting like this, she has these videos where she sort of shows off different ways to wear it. But I think, you could sort of do it like this and somehow like tuck it into itself and sort of have it doubled over like that. Or of course you could wear it sort of across your back like that too. Sort of like, you could sort of drape it over your shoulders, or even kind of like put this point through here, I think is maybe one of the ways that she shows it being done, so that it's kind of something like that. Sort of, like a scarf. But the way that I was planning on wearing it, and this is the way I think she's wearing it in most of the pattern pictures, is you sort of position it so that the point is at the front here, right? So you can see there's the point. So my head is through the hole in the middle and the point is at the front. And then you kind of take the excess, because of course there's a bunch of excess because this is a big open hole in the back, and you sort of, let's see if I can show you guys how I'm doing this. So you take the excess and you sort of twist it, and then you pull it over your head. So now I sort of have this nice doubled over big thick squishy cowl, except that like it's not going to go anywhere because of course it's closed, right? So it's not like a shawl where it's going to keep wanting to fall off. So it's closed on both ends, but I have this sort of big pointy, triangle shawl bandana sort of look, which is really what was appealing to me when I was making it. So I am super excited to be able to wear it. As you can see, I haven't even woven in the ends yet because like I said, I just finished it this morning. And in the pattern, she doesn't say that it explicitly needs to be blocked. And like it doesn't, because it's garter stitch, and garter stitch generally doesn't need to be blocked if you don't want to. But I think I'm going to block it just because I need to sort of tidy up some edges. But yeah, I'm super duper excited to wear it. So let's talk some specifics. I knit this on a US size 4, which is a 3.5 millimeter needle. It's a bigger needle size than what the pattern calls for, but I kind of know my gauge and my knitting, and I know what needle size goes with fingering what yarn to get a good gauge in garter stitch, and a size 4 is it for me. So I sort of followed the version of her pattern, which was the freestyle version, partly because I knew that my gauge was different than hers, and partly because I wasn't following her striping pattern. I was just sort of doing whatever I wanted. And so let's talk about the yarns that I used then. So the two yarns that I used are one yarn, which was dyed by me. Let's see if I can get a little bit closer to show you guys this. So this yarn down here, which is getting totally washed out by the window, maybe I'll see if I can get a better picture of these and I can like put in a picture sort of as I'm talking about them. But this sort of speckled yarn here, this was dyed by me, and this is just a whole bunch of different colors, different speckles. And then this darker yarn here, I talked about this the last time I recorded. This yarn is from Erin of Holland Handmade, and it is so the one dyed by me is an 80/20 superwash merino nylon base, and then this one from Holland Handmade is an 80/20 superwash BFL nylon base. So yeah, I thought they just really played nicely together, and it's like there's enough contrast to be interesting, but not so much that it's like really crazy. And so yeah, I'm super excited about it. I only have this much of the dark yarn left. I used practically all of it. And then I have this much of the sort of multicolored yarn left. So again, not a ton of that left either. So I'm actually really glad about that because I wanted to use up most of the yarn. And then these little bits are just enough to kind of go into my granny stripe blanket and add a little bit of these colors to that blanket. So that's really awesome. Yeah, and I'm just super duper excited about it. I'm gonna take it off because it is a little bit warm in here today. But yeah, and maybe I'll try and, like I said, get some pictures to kind of show off the striping pattern because it's just gonna get totally blown out by the window. But sort of in general, I used the yarn that I dyed for the point down at the bottom, and then I did some stripes, and then I did a big chunk of the darker color, and then I did some sort of stripes here, and then I did a couple stripes, and then sort of transitioned into the speckled color again to do this big triangle piece in the back. So yeah, highly recommend. It was a pattern that was a lot of fun to make, and it produced a very good, I think, interesting, versatile project or product, for being kind of a pattern that I was leaning on just to be very mindless and, just a relaxing knit. So highly recommend. And the directions were very clearly written, and I would recommend it to anyone. So yeah, that's my Matchmaker by Martina Bem. While I was saving that previous clip, I So this morning I decided it was time to, give plant food to all of my plants that I've had at least since last year, which is a pretty big operation because I wanted to water them all at the same time. So I had moved them all into my bathtub and then watered them all, so that I only had to mix up one thing of plant food. And so during that break, I was putting them all back where they needed to go, and it made me realize just how many plants I have. Super cool. Anyway, let's talk about works in progress. So two of my works in progress one of my works in progress I haven't touched, and that is the tie that I'm making for Wesley. Haven't touched it in I don't even know how long, so I'm not going to show it or talk about it. Second work in progress I don't actually have here, and I had made some good progress on it, and that is another thing for Wesley, which is the Man Friend socks. And I hadn't touched those in quite a while, and then I sort of picked them back up again this past week, and I'm through the gusset on them, and I'm into the foot, and I'm, making good progress on them, and I could have sworn that I brought them home with me this weekend, and I didn't. I must have left them in my desk at work, so don't have much to show on those, but hopefully by the next time I record, I will, have a finished pair to show you guys, so that's a bummer, but whatever. So I guess the only work in progress I have to show you today is another thing that, again, I hadn't picked up in a long, long time, like since spring break, I think, which was mid-March. And I just picked up today after I finished the Matchmaker. I was like, well, I want to knit on something, and I'm not quite ready to start something new yet. So plus, you guys know me. I don't like to have a lot of lingering whips, and so I wanted to maybe clear up one of these sock projects that I have. So I picked back up my paraphernalia socks, and as a reminder, I have one of these which I finished over spring break, and this is what it looks like. I'll just give you a quick look at it. So it's this really beautiful cable pattern that runs down the side of the sock, and this is on one of my hand-dyed yarns. This one is an 80/20 superwash Highland wool nylon blend, and I dyed this up with coffee quite a while ago, and I'm making these for a friend of mine. And yeah, this one was pretty easy and fun to work up, and then I just sort of lost steam on the second one, and I think that was because I sort of lost steam on this right around the time that things just got really crazy and I got really busy and I just didn't have the brain power for it. And so, yeah, I had stopped basically right after picking up the gusset stitches, and just didn't work on it for a long time. And so I picked it back up today, and I am now, I think, almost done with the gusset. So that's where I am. I think I maybe have one or two more decrease rows. And yeah, it was not hard to remember sort of the cable pattern, and I'm just chugging along on them. I don't know if I'm gonna try and finish this one before I start anything new. I would like to say that that's what I'm gonna do, but who knows? But yeah, I definitely feel like my mojo for this has come back, and at the very least, my plan is to, get those Man Friend socks finished up for Wesley as sort of my at-work project, because I'm going to have a lot more free time at work, which I'll talk about later. But kind of finish those up, and if nothing else, I will take these in then and get these finished up at work so that I can get them sent off to my friend, even though it'll be summer before they get them, but such is life. They'll still be around for next winter. They'll just be really ready for next winter. So that is my only work in progress. I don't really have a ton to talk about. I know the last time I showed these off, I talked a lot about them, so maybe I will link to that episode. And I talked about how I sort of modified the charts and redid the charts and everything. So maybe I'll link to that. Speaking of linking to things, gosh, if you want links to anything that I mentioned today, any patterns or shops or anything like that, if you're watching this via the embedded video on the blog post or the Ravelry thread, everything should be linked right below the video. If you're watching this on YouTube, in the description box below the video, there will be a link to the blog post. You can go there and then again find everything linked right below the video. Gosh. So that's my current work in progress that I have here to show you. Not super exciting because, like I said, I've only picked it up again today, so there's not much to report. But let's talk about some thoughts on what's coming up next. So I know the last time I recorded, I mentioned that at the same time I bought the Matchmaker pattern, I bought a couple other Martina Bem patterns, and one of them is Rose Candy, which is this really interesting sort of, again, it's like a cowl slash a long scarfy tubey sort of thing. I think you can kind of make it as long as you want it to be. So that, I think, is maybe one of the next sort of big projects that I'm going to cast on next, because it's, you know, it's sort of, you know, the size of like a shawl project. And I showed this off the last time I recorded, but these are the two yarns that I think I'm going to make it with. In her pattern, she uses pink and white, I believe, but I decided I wanted to use this really fun variegated yarn that has like greens and reds and oranges and stuff like that in it. And then to go with it, this, you know, really pretty sort of sparkle yarn that I dyed up, which is sort of this reddish orange, because I just think they will go so well together. But I'm not entirely sure about that yet. I do want to look through more of like the projects and see if I can find an example of someone who did it using sort of a semi-solid and a variegated yarn, just to see kind of how it's going to look. They don't even have to be in this color family. I'm just curious to see kind of how it's going to look, because I could be amenable to doing something else if this is going to look horrible. But yeah, so that's something that I definitely want to make coming up here soon. It might seem strange that I'm sort of getting into knitting shawls, right sort of when we're on the cusp of summer, but I've mentioned this before. The office that I work in is super duper cold, and so I'm actually really thinking that shawls are a great thing for me to be knitting right now, because, you know, with a sweater, I feel like I'm kind of committed to wearing the sweater for the day, because I sort of base my outfit around a sweater. Even sort of like an open front cardigan, it's like, well, this is a part of my outfit and I assume that I'm going to be wearing it all day, which is great if it's like winter and you actually want to be wearing that sweater all day. But in the summer, I feel like I need more pieces that are good and easy to throw on when I'm in my freezing cold office to keep me warm, but are not like a part of the outfit, if that makes sense. So I feel like I'm going to be knitting a lot more shawls coming up, because I've realized sort of where they fit well into my life, and that is sort of as office wear. That's what my exploration station is it sits in my office, and when I get cold, I drape it over my shoulders like a grandma, and I'm just super cozy and warm, and I really love it, and I want more pieces that I can do that with. Anyway. So yeah, so I'm thinking about making that rose candy. I also have seen a pattern on Ravelry lately, which I believe is called the Beekeeper Socks. I'll try and insert a picture of it here. And it's this really beautiful sort of cabled pattern, and I've kind of had my eye on that. I think I would maybe like to knit a pair of those. And I was thinking that this would be a really good yarn to use for it. This is another 80/20, I think it's an 80/20 Superwash Merino or Superwash Highland nylon blend, but this one is from Knit Picks. This is the Hawthorne base, whereas these are from Craftsy. It's the Cloudborne Wearables base, but I think they're roughly equivalent bases. But anyway, this is one that I dyed up a while ago in this sort of dark minty kind of color, and I just feel, and it's very solid, like remarkably solid for a hand dyed yarn. So I feel like this would be really good for those socks. So maybe I'll do that, although I do have like a whole big long list of sock patterns that I want to knit, so I probably shouldn't keep adding things to that list, but who knows what I'm gonna do. But yeah, as you can see, I haven't given a ton of thought to what's coming up next, just because I'm still sort of in a crazy phase of my life. Even though some things are quieting down, a lot of things are not, and I'm just not ready to take on anything too big right now. I'm still sort of in that place where I want sort of mindless knitting, but not too mindless, but like just mindless enough. You guys know what I mean. But yeah, so that's sort of thoughts on what is coming up next. And I have enough time to talk about dyeing. So I have done hardly any dyeing lately. I have dyed exactly one skein of yarn, and this is the skein that I dyed. This is again on that Knit Picks Hawthorne base, so I think it's the 80/20 Highland nylon one, and this is what it looks like. Let's see if I can get it nice and close. So this is what it looks like, and it's of course getting really washed out by the window, but it's sort of this purpley color. Come on. It's sort of purple and like yellows, and I think of it as sort of like blueberry lemonade is sort of what I keep thinking of it as. And maybe I can try and take a picture of it and put it in so that you guys can get a better idea of what the color actually looks like. But yeah, this is one that I dyed because I wanted to have this be the prize for the Exceedingly Vanilla Cal. So let's move into talking about knit along. So the Exceedingly Vanilla Cal was to celebrate the release of my sock pattern, and that ended on the 15th, and I've been a little bit pokey about getting a winner drawn, but I knew I was going to sit down today and record, so I drew a winner this morning. I will have contacted you before you ever see this episode. I'll contact you once I'm done recording. But the winner is, let's see, let's look at I have it up. It is P. Marriott 88, who I believe your name is Pamela from Canada. And they won for post number 7, which was a pair of socks that I believe were knit for your husband. So congratulations. Like I said, I will be shooting you a message on Ravelry very soon so that I can get your mailing address and send this out to you. But yeah, that was pretty cool. And let's take a little pause, and then I'll talk more about the current knit along that is still going on, and then maybe we'll talk a little bit about the next one, because I think, yeah. Okay, so our other cal that is going on right now is the botanical cal, which is sort of drawing to a close. I think when you guys see this, there is just about a week left if you're watching this episode on the day it goes up. But yeah, that is the lace and green cal that is currently going on. I know I've been seeing lots of cool finished objects in the finished object thread. So like I said, you've got still a couple of days left, but probably not a ton of time to start and finish something, but definitely time to make a good effort to finish something up if you've been working on something. And as a quick little reminder, the prize for that is this skein of yarn from Gwyn Spins in the Lisa Frank colorway, and it is just all kinds of color. Like, this is all the colors. But yeah, and this sort of leads me into talking a little bit about our next knit along. I'll talk maybe more about it next time, but I just wanted to sort of get the ideas out there, right? So our next knit along goes from May 1st to June 30th, and the theme is, well, I think the word sort of is Funky Town, and sort of the themes for colors are neons, and for technique is things that are modular or scrappy. So yeah, this one is going to be one where it's a little bit sort of looser interpretation. I mean, I feel like modular / scrappy, like that, I mean, there's a little room for sort of creativity there, but I mean, I think we all kind of have a sense of what that is, and I will be sure to also post some ideas for patterns sort of that fit within what I think of that theme to be. But when it comes to neons, it's going to be a little bit up to your interpretation, because like, I don't really know a way to define neon. I just feel like we know what neon is when we see it, and we know what it isn't, but sort of there's not like a hard and fast line between like, this is neon and this is not neon. So I'm going to, leave it a little bit more open as long as people don't take advantage of that. But yeah, like just sort of to get thinking about it. Yeah, the next cal, the theme is modular / scrappy and neons. So yeah, that's that. And then my question of the week today is tell me, it's not really a question, sort of, I guess, but it's maybe a request, and it's not knitting related, but it is sort of like, tell me about a funny food fail or cooking fail that you've maybe had recently, because I had a pretty epic fail this morning. I went and got my groceries this morning, and I, was doing some food prep today, and I actually currently have a pork shoulder in the oven, because you guys know I love my pulled pork. So like, that is not the fail, right? That's going to come out fine. I've never had that not turn out well. But I, was at the store this morning, and they didn't have any yogurt at all, because I'm kind of picky about what kind of yogurt I eat. I either like to eat Stonyfield organic, plain whole milk yogurt, or I eat, I think the package says it's pronounced Fage, but it's Fage, F-A-G-E, Greek yogurt, plain, full fat, or like the total or whatever. Those are like the only 2 yogurts I like to have, and the grocery store that I go to sometimes just doesn't have them. Like, it's just, I don't know, I feel like they're really bad at restocking things, and so they just didn't have either of them. And I usually eat yogurt for breakfast, and so I was really bummed, and I was like, So I decided I would try something different this week, and I was like, all right, I'm going to make some like healthy flaxseed blueberry muffins, right? That's going to be really good. And I found a recipe, and I already had actually a lot of the ingredients for it. So all I needed to get was like the flaxseed, and maybe that was it, like everything else I already had. And so I was like following this recipe, and I put them in the oven, and I was feeling good about them, and I pulled them out of the oven, and they just are disgusting. Like I ate one of them just to like really figure out, and I let them sit for a little while before I ate them to kind of come together. But like the recipe had me put in a lot of coconut oil, which didn't quite get like absorbed because there was no other flour other than flaxseed. So it's like there was just nothing to absorb all of that oil, and so they just came out greasy and just really gross. And I've had this happen before when I've tried to make these sort of flaxseed muffins, and it's just such a bummer. And like sometimes they're edible, sometimes they're not. This one was just not edible, and so I have 11 muffins sitting out on my stove that I just haven't put in the trash yet, but need to go in the trash. So that's been my cooking fail today. And now I still have to figure out what am I going to do for my breakfasts for the week, because yeah, I do know I still have to go back to the store though, because one of the things I wanted to pick up was a cooked chicken and they didn't have any of those. So I need to go back and get one of those later. So maybe I'll find something else later. But tell me about one of your cooking fails to make me feel less bad about myself. But yeah, that's all I have for the knitting type stuff for today. So if that's all you were here for, thanks very much for hanging out with me, and I will see you probably in 2 weeks. And if you want to hang around and hear some chit chat, we can do that. I can tell you kind of what I've been up to for the past 3 weeks and why my life has been so cray-cray. And yeah, we can have some, nice knitting time and we'll just chill out. So if that's what you're into, stick around. Otherwise, thanks for watching and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Well, hello there. So yeah, I wanted to scooch back a little bit while I chit-chatted because I find that sort of sitting up without any sort of back support on my bed, it's just very uncomfortable for a long period of time. And maybe it's because I have a weak core, I don't know. But anyway, I've scooched all the way back so I can lean up against my headboard. But hopefully you guys can still hear me okay, because as you can see, I brought my microphone back with me. So now I just have to remember that I don't need to speak loudly because the microphone's right there. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about the craziness of my life for the past couple weeks. So the last time I recorded, I believe it was Easter Sunday. And at the time, I think I mentioned that my mother was going to be coming into town the next weekend, and so that happened. She came in on Thursday the 5th and left on Tuesday the 10th, so she stayed for a long weekend, and that was a lot of fun. It was probably the most time that I've spent with my mom in quite a while, sort of the most time continuously. And yeah, I just sort of showed her around Richmond because it was the first time she'd been to Richmond, and we, just did all sorts of things. It was basically just an extended girls' weekend, and it was a lot of fun. We did go and see the movie Ready Player One, which I thought was really interesting. I didn't know anything about it really going into it, except that we watched the trailer, because my mom loves to go to movies, and this is something that we used to do a lot when I was younger, because I worked for a little while at a movie theater, and so I could go see movies for free. This was when I was like 15. So we could go see movies for free. So we went and saw a lot of movies for free. And so, she and I have always really enjoyed going to the movies, and I don't go to the movies much anymore. Like I was trying to think of what the last movie I saw before Ready Player One was, and I honestly can't remember. Because I just don't really have the time for it right now. And like, not having a car doesn't help either. But, yeah, so we went and saw Ready Player One, and I have, since found out that it was a book, and I have the book on reserve at the library because I'm curious to read the book. But basically, the premise of the movie is that it's sort of set in the future, like I think it's like 2040 something, and sort of the world has gotten real bad, and sort of everyone plays this like online sort of MMORPG kind of game, where you sort of have this online persona and you interact with people online, and then just sort of and like the basis of the movie is, right, everyone's been playing this game, and at the time that the movie is set at, the guy who created the game, who's sort of this like Steve Jobs sort of figure, died, I think, at 5 years ago at this point in time, and he hid this Easter egg in the game such that whoever found it first would inherit the company, sort of like a Willy Wonka kind of thing, and no one has found it yet. So it's sort of the story of this kid searching for this thing, and in a lot of ways it's a very sort of predictable movie, and I think it's sort of meant to be like a kids movie maybe, but it is sort of predictable in a lot of ways, and I won't say much more than that. I won't even say what I thought of it. I liked it. It was a fun movie overall, but I won't, whatever. I don't want to spoil it for anyone. But what I did find really interesting about it is it's sort of an interesting commentary on sort of the state of the current world, which I actually didn't find anyone mentioning when I looked up stuff about it online after seeing it. But I thought it was very interesting where it's you kind of have this future where everyone interacts only with other people online. And I was like, man, that is a strong commentary on current society, right? Where we do so much of our interacting with other people online, and we kind of escape the real world into these online fantasy worlds. And I don't mean things like World of Warcraft. I mean, that's a whole other thing. But I mean, things like Instagram and Facebook and stuff where it's people talk about the highlight reel and everything, but it's that sort of is an alternate reality, and it is sort of people escaping their real life to go live a better one online and meet better, people who seem better online than they are in real life. I don't know. I just thought it was a very interesting allegory, and or maybe allegory isn't the right word, but interesting sort of thing to think about, and that's why I'm sort of interested to read the book and see what the book is like. But yeah, haven't gotten it yet because, of course, with the movie having come out, it is, the wait list is a mile deep at the library, so who knows when I'll get it, but I will report back when I do. But yeah, so that was that, and that just, it's I loved having my mom here. It was a lot of fun to have her here, but it definitely took up a lot of time and energy, and it was a little bit mentally draining just because she was staying with me in my apartment, which, as I've mentioned before, is tiny, and so she was sleeping out in the kitchen, sort of the same way, I've talked before about doing kitchen camping when they're working on the street outside of my house. She was sleeping on an air mattress out there. So it was just sort of exhausting, being a person who's used to almost always being alone when I'm at home, suddenly having someone here all the time. And my mom was very good about recognizing that and giving me my space and all of that. So it's I don't fault her for that. It just is the nature of having someone else stay with you. And so that was, on top of also working and all kinds of other things. So there was that. And then I had been, and that same weekend, right? So the same weekend that my mom was here, Wesley was actually moving into a new apartment down in Alabama. Need a coffee sip. So Wesley was moving into a new apartment down in Alabama because the place that he got when he sort of first moved in there was just a sort of a temporary place. It was a room in some guy's house, sort of while he scouted around for an apartment. So he'd gotten an apartment, and then that first weekend in April, after Easter, was his move-in weekend. And so his parents were actually down in Alabama that weekend helping him move. So we were both sort of, having the same feeling of our parents aren't doing anything wrong, but we're not used to having them around, and now they're around a lot. So he was doing that, and so my plan, because I hadn't been down to see him since I moved him down there in February. We didn't get a chance to see each other in March because I used my time that I would have for traveling to instead go to Iowa to see my dad and my brother. So we didn't get to see each other in March. So I was planning on waiting actually until this weekend to go and see him in Alabama, because I wanted to give him sort of a weekend to get settled into his new place without his parents there. And so I was going to be headed out there this weekend. That was the plan. Right? So then he tells me, well, it turns out I have to work this weekend. He had to work this weekend because sometimes he has to work over the weekend. Sometimes they're doing something that has to get done over the weekend, or it has to continue over a weekend, and whatever, right? This is just what happens. And so he wound up telling me oh yeah, I have to work the weekend of the 21st. So, but I want you to come down, but not that weekend. So either you need to come down this coming weekend, which would have been the weekend right after my mom was here, or wait until the end of the month. So I either had to go over the weekend of, what was it, the 14th, or I would go over the weekend of the 28th. And I was kind of sick of waiting. I didn't want to wait until the end of the month. And so I turned around and, basically, I think maybe the day that my mom left, I booked a plane ticket to go to Huntsville, and I went to Huntsville last weekend. So that's why I didn't record last weekend, even though I had sort of intended to. I had intended to skip the weekend that my mom was here and then record the next weekend, except that I wasn't planning on being in Alabama. So, I was in Alabama. It was really great. The weather was not great, though. I mean, it was kind of rainy all weekend, but Wesley's new place is really nice. It was nice to kind of help get him a little bit more settled and, decorate the place a little bit and just, get to hang out and have like a low-key weekend. Like, the nice thing about the weather being kind of gross was that it made just hanging out and not doing much sort of less guilty feeling. Like, it just, I don't know, we didn't feel bad about just like not doing much. So we just got to hang out and enjoy each other's company. And then, as per my usual, I almost didn't make it back because I had planned to fly out of Huntsville basically on the last flight of the night, which is never a good idea, right? Like, I don't encourage this, but I wanted to get as much time as I could with Wesley. So my flight was supposed to leave, I think at like 6 something, and it was going to leave Huntsville, and I was flying on United. So I was going to leave Huntsville and fly to Dulles, which is the DC airport, and then fly from Dulles to Richmond, which that flight is kind of like a joke because it's only like 20 minutes long, but it takes 3 hours to make the drive. So whatever. So that was the plan. And then I start getting text messages Sunday afternoon saying, oh, your flight's been delayed, by 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. And I'm kind of like, oh, this is not good. Like, this is not a good omen. And so it finally got to the point where the flight was delayed enough that I was going to miss my connection in Dulles and I was going to be stuck in DC, which again is not like the end of the world, but I was just like, this is not the situation that I want to be in. And so and I knew that Delta and American both had flights out of Huntsville at 7 p.m. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go to the airport and I'm getting on one of those flights. I don't care what I have to do. I'm getting on one of those flights. So I go to the airport and I talk to the person at the United check-in desk, and she was very nice. And at first I was kind of like, well, I'm going to miss my connection. Like, what do I do? And she's like, well, we can put you on another flight out of Dulles tomorrow at 1 p.m. So this would have been Monday at 1 p.m. flying out of Dulles, when it's like, I have to be to work on Monday. And it was just like, how is this a solution? Like, I could catch a train in that amount of time. Like, I could drive from DC down to Richmond in that amount of time. Like, how is this a solution? So, of course, I didn't get upset because, like, this is not the time to get upset. So I was just like, well, I know that the other airlines have a flight out. Is there anything you can do to get me on one of those flights? And so she did. She put me on a Delta flight, which had a very tight connection through Atlanta. But I made it, and I made it home, and it was just like, thank goodness, because I think ultimately, like, my flight got canceled somewhere along the way because I got an email later from United saying like, oh, we're so sorry your flight got canceled. Please do a survey for us. And it was like, nope. I don't like flying United. It's not my favorite airline to fly on. And I was only flying on it this time because it was going to save me like $130. But it's just like, I do not like flying United. I just don't like it. I mean, not that all airlines have their problems, but like United, it just seems like I'd rather not. But anyway, so that was then last weekend. And so now this weekend, oh, my screen went black. What's going on? What's happening? Okay. I think we're good. All right, but I do need to not keep talking. So yeah, this weekend I've just been sort of adulting. Like, this has just been a what is referred to as a gist weekend, which is a get your stuff together weekend. And so yeah, I've just, because of course the past 2 weekends I didn't really have a weekend, so I have just been trying to clean and, get meal prep done and all of that kind of stuff. Dealing with my plants, like I said, and just like all the things that needed to get done because I didn't have weekends the last 2 weekends. It's sort of like when Wesley was here in February when he was moving. It was just like, oh my gosh, I just need a weekend. So yeah, so that's sort of been this weekend. I feel like it hasn't been maybe as productive as I would like it to be, but what can you do? So yeah, like I said, so I mentioned that things are gonna get a lot more chill at work, and that is because this past week was the last week of the undergraduate or of the introductory labs, which if you've been around for a little while, you will know that that is what my job is basically running the introductory labs. And so now I sort of have this, they pretty much always end before the end of the semester. So I have a couple weeks before the semester officially ends, and then I have maybe a month before summer classes start. And so, I need to make good use of this time because I have a lot that needs to get done during this time. Like a lot of administrative sort of stuff and like editing sort of stuff. But like the nice thing is that like I'm now no longer beholden to like other people's schedules. It's now everything gets done on my time when I want it to get done and at the pace I want it to get done. So that's really nice. And I'm really looking forward to that because for one thing, like I said, everything gets done on my schedule. And for another thing, like this part of the work, this sort of rewriting labs, coming up with new experiments, editing the manual, stuff like that, is actually the part of the job that I really like the most because it's sort of the creative work and I really enjoy doing that. So I'm really looking forward to this, and I think it'll be a nice sort of break after what was just a crazy spring semester, like crazy professionally, crazy personally, just crazy, crazy, crazy. And it'll be a nice chance to kind of like catch my breath for a little bit. But I'm getting about at the size of a clip that I start to feel uncomfortable that my computer is not going to save it properly. So I'm going to go ahead and end things here. Sorry you guys had to stare at my feet this whole time. I know some people find feet really gross, but what can you do? Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you very much for hanging out with me if you made it this far, and I hope everyone is having a good spring. I think it's finally starting to feel like spring more places, although I know in Minnesota they've gotten a lot of snow lately, so maybe it's still not feeling like spring where you are, but I hope that it is. And yeah, I will see you guys again in 2 weeks, hopefully. And until then, have a good one, and yeah, bye.